All right, let's get right into this. When we think of ancient artifacts, we usually picture dusty objects behind glass in a museum. But what if one of the most famous pieces of armor in history wasn't just armor? What if it was actually a blueprint for a hidden system of protection, not for your body, but for meaning itself?
So the whole story kicks off right here, with the prophet Dāwūd, that's David, and this incredible divinely taught skill for making chainmail. The verse is super clear. This armor was made for protection. But you have to ask, protection from what? And how exactly? Well, the source material we're digging into today suggests the answer is way bigger than just stopping a physical attack.
And that really is the million-dollar question, isn't it? What if that physical object, those interlocking rings of metal, was actually a model for something else? A non-physical structure designed to guard the integrity of the divine message itself across centuries of interpretation and change.
And here is the core idea from our source. The Qur'an itself is built just like this chainmail. Now, this isn't just some nice-sounding metaphor. No, it's being presented as a structural reality, an actual engineering principle applied to revelation, designed to be flexible, light, and yet completely impenetrable.
The key that unlocks this entire structure starts with a number, 71. What's so amazing about this number is how it creates this kind of triple lock. It points to Dāwūd's armor, sure, but it's also the chapter number for the story of Noah. And, as we're about to see, it's the exact count of the core components of this divine armor.
So here's how it's laid out. If you go through the entire Quran, you'll find there are exactly 71 chapters that happen to have a 27th verse. The theory is that these 71 specific verses, these 27s, are the individual interlocking rings of the chainmail. Each one is a critical node in this massive, interconnected network.
And these rings aren't just placed randomly, they actually form functional circuits. I mean, just look at this core loop here. You've got verse 1927, which signals the word entering the system. Then you have 2927, which describes how it's transmitted through a structured lineage. And finally, 7127, from Noah's chapter, that's the feedback loop, the part that identifies how corruption can creep in and reproduce itself. It's a perfect input-process-output cycle.
And just like in real armor, not every ring has the same job. They're specialized. You've got break rings, like 227, which talks about severing what God ordered to be joined. You have truth test rings, like in the story of Joseph, where a signal's authenticity is checked. Transmission rings carry the information forward, and judgment rings lock in a final outcome. But you know what's almost as important as these 71 rings? The 43 chapters that don't have a verse 27. These aren't mistakes. They're the gaps that give the chainmail its flexibility. See, a solid plate of steel will shatter under pressure, but a mesh flexes and absorbs the impact. Those gaps are the system's breathing room.
So, what does each individual ring actually do? The source material calls it a Razim boundary operator, which sounds complicated, but you can just think of it like a simple switch, a critical fork in the road. At every single one of these 71 nodes, a choice is made, to align with the divine pattern or to deviate from it. Every ring is a test of integrity.
Okay, so if the rings are these decision points, what's the rule that governs how they all work together? Well, that brings us to what the source calls the 237 protocol. This is basically the fundamental weave of the entire chainmail system.
It's really an elegant three-step process, and it maps directly to those numbers, 2, 3, and 7. First, you have the split, which is phase 2. Potential or energy enters the system at one of those binary choice points we just talked about. Second, the formation, phase 3. That potential takes on a defined structure as it moves through the 71-ring network. And finally, the return, phase 7. The result of that process feeds back into the system, which is exactly what we see in that corruption equation from verse 7127.
And this is where the idea gets huge. According to this interpretation, the 237 protocol isn't just a neat way to analyze a text. No, it's being presented as the universe's basic operating system for how anything changes from one state to another, from pure potential into physical reality.
Now, I know this can all sound incredibly abstract, so let's bring it back down to earth with a case study from the source, the story of Noah's Ark. But we're going to look at it in a new way, as a live demonstration of this system running a full-scale repair protocol.
And would you look at that verse number 27? Of course it is. This verse, 2327, is one of our 71 rings. It signals the start of building a system specifically designed to survive a total system collapse, all according to a divine blueprint. This source asks us to completely rethink the Ark.
It's not just an escape boat. Think of it more like a localized buffer zone, a chainmail reconstruction chamber. Its job wasn't to stop the flood. Its job was to create a protected bubble where the essential code of life could be preserved, while the corrupted world outside was totally wiped clean.
This slide shows that function perfectly. Inside the Ark, you have a stable, dynamic, life-preserving system. Outside, total destruction and collapse. The Ark is the boundary, the firewall that protects the integrity of the system from complete chaos.
And the story itself plays out the chainmail's repair protocol, step by step. The broken rings, like Noah's own son who refused to believe, are removed from the system. They're left behind. The valid rings, the believers, the pairs of animals, they're kept safe. And from this proven, stable core, the entire mesh of life on Earth is rebuilt from the ground up.
So, we've gone from ancient armor to cosmic principles to a prophetic story, but what does any of this have to do with us, right here, right now? This is where we shift to the personal application of this whole system.
Let's just ask the question straight up. If this chainmail is a real, functional system of protection that's encoded in Scripture, how does it actually apply to our lives in this chaotic, modern world?
This is how it maps out. The flood, that overwhelming force of destruction, that's the dunya, all the entropy, the distraction, the noise of modern life. The Ark itself is built from two key materials. The wood is your fitra, your natural, pure soul, your innate connection to the divine. And the iron nails holding it all together? That is your discipline, your prayer, your focus, your structure. And the protective buffer that this Ark creates? That is taqwa, a state of deep God consciousness and awareness.
And that's really the bottom line here. In this model, spiritual practices like prayer aren't just empty rituals you go through. They are acts of spiritual engineering. You are literally, actively constructing your own personal ark, your own buffer zone that lets you navigate the flood of daily life without getting swept away.
So let's bring it right back to where we started. The absolute genius of Dāwūd's chainmail was its design. It wasn't strong because it was made of thick, heavy plates. Its strength came from distributing any impact across a flexible network of interlocked, mutually supporting rings.
And this is exactly how the Quranic chainmail is said to function. Its protection doesn't come from building a big wall around the truth in one single vulnerable spot. It comes from distributing the validation of that truth across 71 interlocked witnesses, where each one helps support the integrity of the whole.
So, I'll leave you with this last thought to chew on. We so often think of strength in terms of walls, fortresses, and rigid defenses. But what if the most resilient, most powerful form of protection isn't a fortress at all, but a flexible, interconnected, and living network?